Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. This is Steph Lee, founder of Host Agency Reviews, and with me is Sandy Saburn with Gifted Travel Network. Hello, Sandy.
Hi, Steph. So exciting to be here.
We are so excited to have you on. And for those that don't know Sandy, she is the Chief Strategic Alliance Officer over at Gifted Travel Network. She is very skilled when it comes to technology, to marketing, to closing the deal, which is what we will be talking about today. So, just a few things before we get started. I'm going to turn this over to Sandy and she'll be running the presentations, but we want your questions throughout them. So, as they pop up, go ahead, write them in the comments, and we will make sure to answer them. We may pop in depending on what the question is, or we will answer them at the end, but we will get to all of them. No questions are dumb questions. We know that there are a lot of newer advisors out there, and we were all new at one time. Sandy and I
That's right.
definitely have asked our share of questions about things that are, general knowledge, but not if you're not in the industry. So
That's right.
please ask those questions. And then Sandy, let's pop up your screen.
Perfect.
There we go. So great topic today. And Sandy, I'm going to pop up, but if you need anything, let me know. And don't forget, everybody, put those questions in the comments. And if you pop on late, we will be sending the link to the recording to all of you that registered. And I'll have Mary put a link to the registration in the comments if you haven't registered already. With that, Sandy, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Steph. I'm so happy to be here. Host Agency Reviews is just such an important partner to Gifted Travel Network, and so happy to be able to share some information with all of you. And as Steph said, I was new one time too. It was more than 20 years ago, but came to this as a second career, like many of you probably are. And there were lots of things that I did not know anything about. A whole new world of terminology, technology, and lots of things to learn. So I I have a very specific topic to share with you today, but I'm always happy to answer questions and be helpful in any way that you can and that I can and that you can learn from me, learn from one another. That's one of the things that I think is so important about being with a host agency, which is why host agency reviews is so important, is finding that right host agency is instrumental to being successful. So let's get started, and I'm going to advance my presentation, and then if there's any issues with that, I know Steph will pop on and let me know that. So let me tell you a little bit about me so you know where this information is coming from. So I am the Chief Strategic Alliances Officer at Gifted Travel Network, which is kind of an unusual title. And one of my areas of responsibility is operations and how we serve our what we call our members, which are the travel advisors that we work with, but also working with technology companies and identifying technology options for our advisors to use. So, a bit of a tech geek. So, that's how I ended up in that role. But I have been in travel for more than 20 years, and I started as a frontline travel advisor. I went to travel school. I learned all the things that you learn back in the day in travel school, like how to handwrite tickets, which really wasn't at all helpful because you couldn't handwrite tickets anymore. But that was what they always taught, so that's what they taught us. So I really love this industry, and I really love helping new people who come into this industry because we need you. There is far more need for travel advisors than there are people to serve the clients looking for travel advisors. And that is particularly true on the premium and luxury side of the industry. But what I want to talk about today is how to close the sale. And I want to start with focusing on answering a question that some of you may have wondered about. Why is it that clients book with some advisors and not others? Why is it that some people have 10 people reach out to them? Hey, I'm interested in taking a trip. I'm interested in doing this, interested in doing that. And the clients book with them, and yet another advisor can quote the same things, and yet they get one or two bookings or even no bookings. And one of the really enlightening surveys that I've seen, of the many surveys I've seen over the years, sort of addresses this comment. And it was a survey done by CLIA, which you're probably all familiar with CLIA, which is the cruise industry professional organization. And CLIA, in partnership with some of the bigger cruise lines, did a study of people who had booked a cruise with a travel advisor and then booked a next cruise, but not with that same travel advisor. And they asked them, why is it that you didn't go back to the first travel advisor? And the response was generally, uh, they didn't do anything wrong. They just didn't do anything spectacular. They just didn't do anything to really stand out or make you feel like, gosh, I really have to work with this person again. So that's at the heart of what we're going to talk about today, is how to be that person who really stands out from the crowd and really gets clients excited about working with you so you can close the sale. Because I want to address one thing right up front, and just sort of talk about the two different ways that you can book travel. The first one is volume, and that is that you can just churn and burn and quote and just sell and book. And this tends to be, whether it's cruises or all-inclusive packages, it's typically not FITs, but you're doing those faster bookings and you're doing a lot of them. And that's one way to sell travel. The other way is a more consultative approach. And consultative is really where the long-term sustainability is for travel advisor. It is also where the money is. So if you are in this to have a life you love around your passion for travel, then consultative selling is what you want to be doing. Another thing I want to just get right out there to begin with, for those of you who may be new or who are newer, is please do not go into this business thinking that you're going to compete with the OTAs, the online travel agencies. You can't. Bottom line, if you're going to compete on dollars, if you're going to compete on deals, you're going to lose every time. And even if you win a customer based on deals, you will lose that customer also based on a deal. Somebody else will give them a $10 discount and they will go book with them rather than with you. So consultative selling is a really important thing to keep in mind as we go through the rest of this presentation about how to close the sale, because what we're talking about is not closing the sale on volume business. So it's about relationships, it's about getting to know your clients. And consultative selling not only leads to longer term relationships with those clients, it also leads to a much higher level of referrals from existing clients, which also leads to money and long term. And I'm talking about money a lot because, look, I mean, ideally, you want to be able to pay yourself a salary, pay the bills, and maybe not avoid, maybe travel and avoid having to just be one of those travel advisors who never goes anywhere because you can't afford to. So let's talk about how to be a successful consultative selling advisor. And these are really what I consider to be the keys to consultative selling. And we're going to talk about these in detail in each turn. In turn, first of all, establishing rapport with the client, listening and learning from them, demonstrating your expertise, and then asking for the sale. And I'll talk more about each of these in detail. So if you have questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat. I'm not going to spend a lot of time focusing on the chat and answering questions, but I know that we will pick those up later. But I do want to address one right now before we go. It just happened to pop up and I saw it. I have a hard time matching Costco deals. Don't. If your client is most interested in a Costco deal and that's not your ideal client. You cannot build a successful travel business based on that kind of model. If you're trying to match prices across the board all the time with people who are not providing service and you are providing service, it just doesn't work. I mean, it really takes time to really successfully work with a client. Costco's not doing that. I love Costco. I love going to Costco and buying things, but I don't buy travel there, obviously. So really focus on what it is that you're good at and what you are good at, what you should be good at, what you want to be good at is being a travel expert. To be a travel expert is how you get long-term clients that will book with you again and again because you're meeting their needs, you're helping them, you're saving them time, you're you're making them look fantastic. So I really encourage you to focus on that particular area. Focus on serving them and recognizing that they're coming to you because you are the expert. And then one other just sort of little caveat, anytime I say expert, people feel like I cannot book something unless I've been there, stayed there, sailed on that ship. And that is absolutely not true. So please get that out of your head right now. I know people who sell millions of dollars a year of destinations that they've never been to. You don't have to go. You just have to know the right things to help a client, whether that's working with a DMC, a destination management company, who can help you in that particular region, or having expertise about if you're doing cruises, a cruise line. So really, it's all about you being the expert, positioning yourself that way so that you really wow the client. To really wow the client, the first thing you have to do is to establish a rapport with them. So often, when a potential client reaches out to a new advisor, the very first thing that they want to do is to jump right to, when are you going? What is it you want to do? What's your budget? How many people are going? Let me get you some pricing. You've done, if you do that, if a client calls you, emails you, fills out a web form, however they reach out to you, and you say to them, you get the particulars of what it is that they're looking for, and you say, I'll get some pricing and get back to you, you've done nothing to establish rapport with them. And this is where it can be a little tricky with new people coming into the industry, because this is where you really have to take control of the conversation and take control of how the process works. And you have to think through the process and put in place a procedure. So for instance, I know that, you know, back in the day when you wanted to do business with a company, you picked up the telephone and you talked to them on the phone. And there weren't all these other options to work with somebody, or you just showed up at their place of business. It doesn't work that way in the travel industry for the most part now. So you either are going to have an online form on a website or some sort of a form that they're going to fill out and reach out to you. Maybe you have a phone number, they're going to call you, or maybe they're going to send an email. What I really recommend that you do is to establish a process that will allow you to have a conversation with that person. I am personally not a huge fan of really long intake forms. There is a point at which you will need to have a client fill out a form, but I don't think that should be the first thing that you do. I like the idea of when somebody reaches out to you, responding to them and say, hey, thank you so much for reaching out to me. I'd love to work with you. I do a lot of fill in the blank, whatever it is they're interested in, and would love to chat with you. Here's the best way for us to proceed. And you can send them a link to, maybe you have a Calendly or some other kind of program where they can pick a date and time, and it can be a phone call, or ideally it's a Zoom call. So just the same way that what we're doing right this moment differs from a podcast, and you can see me and you can see my gestures and you can hear me, all of that is 75% of communication. So when you're just talking to somebody on the phone, you don't get as much of that. So if you can talk to them on Zoom and then you can ask them questions about what it is that they're looking for, what they've done in the past, get to know them better, they can get to know you better. It just becomes a stickier relationship. They're more likely to do business with you. The other thing I've heard people say, I tried that, it didn't work. Nobody wanted to set up an appointment. They just wanted a price. Then those are not your ideal clients. And I think the whole marketing to get to your ideal clients is a whole separate presentation. But the reality is just because somebody comes into your space and that wants to book travel or wants a price on travel does not mean that they're your ideal client, and it's okay that you don't end up working with them. So if you can take control of the relationship, send them a link and say, hey, I'd love to set up a call with you. Do it over Zoom, ideally, or Google Meet, or one of those platforms where you can see one another, and have a conversation with them, then you are going to be able to build that rapport with them because you're going to be able to learn about them. They can learn about you. And if they push back on you, then it's okay. If they push back on you, they're just not your ideal client. And give yourself grace about that, because when you're new to this industry and you're getting 2 or 3 out of the every 10 people that talk to you, you can do a lot of beating yourself up, and that you please don't do that. The world will beat you up enough. You don't need to beat yourself up. So just recognize that not everybody who reaches out is going to be the right person. So when you're establishing rapport with them, let's talk a little bit about how you actually do that. So I think the very best way to establish rapport with somebody is to listen and to learn from what they're saying, to ask open-ended questions. And so this might go, I'll give you sort of an example. This is just a one-sided example, but let's just say that I sent you my calendar link. You're my prospective client. You set up a call. We reach out on Zoom. We say, hello, how are you? Nice to meet you. So happy to talk to you. And remember, this person might be just down the street from you. They might be completely across the country. That's the great thing about today's world. You don't have to worry about, you should not ever limit yourself to just reaching out to people who are in your geographic area. Reach out to people who are far away. Just wherever they are, they can be your ideal client. And ask them. Say, so tell me more about this trip that you're planning. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions because I really want to learn what's going to be important to you. And when you're asking them those questions, you have a couple of jobs. One, obviously, you're listening to them. Take notes or don't take notes, depending on if you're a note taker. I'm a note taker, so I'm constantly writing. So I usually say to people, I'm going to be taking notes while we talk. I hope that's okay. Don't think I'm distracted. I'm just making notes. And then ask them questions about what they tell you. So for instance, if the potential client says to you, I really want to take my family to St. Lucia, and we're so excited about this trip, and we really want to book 5 nights in St. Lucia. And so we'll need, place to stay, flights, that sort of thing. Can you help me with that? Okay, so right now you don't have nearly enough information to go on because in St. Lucia, there's more than one place to stay. How are you going to match them up with the right type of resort? So asking them, if so, tell me a little bit more about what is so magical to you about St. Lucia. And when you ask that question, not only listen to what they say to you, but watch for the places where the face lights up. So maybe they're people that are completely opposite of me, and they're very active and hiking and doing all that outdoorsy stuff. And so they say, we want to go out and we want to hike and we want to do this and we want to do that. Make note of all those things so that you can help get them in the right place. And at some point, you may also want to ask them some questions about, have you been to St. Lucia before? Have you been to other Caribbean islands? what are some of the places that you've been to that you really love? And listen to what they tell you. Look to see when their face lights up. I don't generally like to ask people about their worst travel experience. And I know that that can give you some good information, but I just generally like to stick with the positive when I'm having conversations with especially new people who don't really know me yet. So ask them those questions. Ask them, well, tell me about, so you mentioned it's your family. So are you taking kids? Are they grown? Are they children? How old are they? What do they love to do? What are they involved in right now? And get as much detail about the group that's going as possible so that you can learn from them. And then the side effect of what you're doing right now is not just that you're getting a lot of information about them, they're learning about you. They're learning that, hey, this person is really, this person's more of a consultant than I thought that they were. I thought I was just going to give them names, the destination, the dates, and how many people were going, and they were going to give me some pricing. And so at some point, you're going to want to say to them, what I love doing is crafting vacations that will be memorable to people. And you're going to say this in your own words, but saying something along those lines and helping people understand, especially if they're talking about families. With families, you've only got 18 summers and you want every one of those to count. And you also want to let people know that your goal is to find them the very best match for the way they want to travel and the very best value for their vacation budget. That does not mean cheapest. It does not mean most expensive. It means getting them the most value. But in order to get them the most value, you have to understand what they value. This An example of that is for some people, having a car service pick them up at the airport and a person standing there with a sign with their name on it so that the moment they walk through out of customs and immigration, they see their name and they don't have to worry about where they're going. For some people, that's super important. For some people, they don't really care about that. So it's getting to know what they value. And some of that is based on how savvy a traveler they are. For some people, if they have not traveled extensively internationally, the idea of going to a foreign country and having to go through all that stuff that you have to go to when you land at the new airport is daunting. And so having someone guide them through that and make decisions for their vacation that will help ease that transition is incredibly powerful. Just as if you were booking somebody on a cruise and they'd not traveled a lot, I think a lot of times people say it's just a cruise. I'm not going to charge a fee. I'm just booking a cruise, super easy. You should never book a cruise for somebody and just book the cruise. They've got to get to wherever the cruise leaves from. They usually are going to need to get there early, so they're going to need a pre-cruise hotel. They're going to need help picking out short excursions, and they don't have to be booked through the cruise line. You can book them through somebody else, and they'll have a better experience, and you'll make commission on it. So there's a lot of things that go into all that that you need to learn about what's important to them so that you can help make decisions about putting together a proposal for them. And remember, all of this stuff that I've just talked about, I haven't even had a real conversation with you yet. And this takes time. And so that's why it's important to set up the meeting. And you may even want to have some notes in what you send to them to say, it takes time for us to have this conversation because it's really important for me to get to know you so that I can craft the perfect vacation experience for you. Not don't talk about booking a trip. You're not booking a trip. I can book a trip on my phone. You're crafting vacations or come up with whatever language you like to use for that. And once you've had this conversation with them, and I would say to plan for at least 20 minutes for this, probably half an hour is probably better. Some of your clients are going to love this and will talk to you for 2 days if you would let them. And some of them are going to be like, I don't really like talking to people, so could we wrap this up? And it's going to be important for you to listen to their body, read their body language, listen to what they're saying, how they're answering, and get them through there. And before you wrap up the the conversation, all along you have been dropping little hints about, oh, just thinking off the top of my head, that in St. Lucia, there's this amazing resort called this that would be perfect for your family. I don't know anything about their availability for when you're looking to go, but just popped into my head that that would be a good match. Or I've had people do this one excursion where you go and, scale the mountain or whatever, and you can see how into adventure travel I am. And this, I shouldn't use that as an example, but you scale the mountain or whatever it is you want to do, and I think your family would love that because they're so adventurous. So you're dropping hints that demonstrate what it is that you do, but you're also going to need to have a conversation before you wrap up to say, I'm excited to get to work on this. So let me tell you how this is going to work. Because I think managing expectations is super important with people. Managing expectations is really important when you're talking about vacations, as I'm sure that any of you who've ever booked anything know that sometimes people reach out to you and they need a quick turnaround, which to you might mean 24 hours. To them, that might mean it's 25 past the hour. I need it by the top of the hour, which is not realistic in any sense. But that's an important gauge to know. So I usually would like to say to people, here's how I work. I'm going to take all this amazing information that you've given me. I've got the dates. I've got all the information. I'm going to send a follow-up email to you that's going to have a couple of things that I need you to do for me. One is a client intake form, because I'm going to need everybody's legal names exactly the way they are on their passports. I'm going to need their passport numbers, all the dates of birth, all the details that you're going to need so that if you find something, you can hold it for them. And I'm also going to send you an agreement that explains how I work. And the way that I work when I work with clients is I charge a professional service fee, or a booking fee, or a consultative fee, or whatever you want to call it. I don't really like calling it a professional fee. Whatever you want to say, I my fee to put all of this together, fully inclusive of the package, is $250 or whatever it is that you charge. And I'll send you the details on that, and there will be a link at the bottom where you can just enter your credit card number. You'll click on it, enter your credit card number. It'll process the fee. And once I get confirmation of that, I'll start working on this. And then I want to schedule a time for us to go over what I find. It's Today's Tuesday, and I'm going to need a couple of days to put this together. So I could either schedule something with you for Friday of this week or Tuesday of next week, which would be better for you, and let them respond. Now, occasionally you might have people say, oh, I didn't realize that there was going to be a fee for this service. That does not mean they're not going to pay the fee. They're just expressing an unaware an that they were not aware that you charge a professional fee, and that's okay. Don't let that rattle you. Don't become defensive about it. And you can just say, yes, it takes me a lot of time to put together all of these components, and I want to put together the very best components for you. And so I'm going to spend time crafting this vacation. So that is my professional fee. And stop talking. Sometimes people just talk themselves out of a sale, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But it's important for you to just listen to what they say next. And if you feel like they're hemming or hawing or uncomfortable or aren't sure they want to do that, then what I would suggest that you do is to say to them, do you have any questions or concerns that we should talk about? And if they come back to the fee thing, you will run across a few people here or there who say, I'm just not going to pay a fee. I can get it for free somewhere else. And my response to that is usually, I'm sure there are people out there who will work for free. You know, my time is valuable. I have connections across this industry. You know, I'm a part of, for Gifted Travel Network, we're part of Virtuoso. So I'm a part of multiple organizations like Virtuoso, which is the world's leading luxury travel organization. And I have connections that other people who work for free probably don't have. So if that's important to you, I'd love to work with you on this, but if paying the fee is a non-starter for you, then I wish you well on your journey and I hope you have an amazing trip. And just let it go at that, because you are going to run into those people occasionally, but for the most part, you're going to find that people are going to expect to pay a fee. I haven't seen any consumer articles in a long time that didn't say, to work with a professional travel advisor, you should expect to pay a fee. So be aware that that's out there and that you are going to have people say that. That they're going to see that and they're going to expect to part paying that fees. Now, there are certainly those advisors out there who say, I work for free. Well, free has no value. And I would argue that the people who will be in this industry long term, who are going to be successful and who are profitable, are not going to say that, because you are a business owner. Are developing knowledge and expertise, and you should be paid for that knowledge and expertise. And yes, you do get commission on some products, but not on everything. And so you need to have that fee. And I think a lot of people, as part of the pandemic, who were in this as part of the pandemic, found out they will never work for free again, because when the pandemic hit and all those bookings canceled, every bit of that work was for nothing. That was gone. They had no money to show for it. So I definitely would be in the fee camp, and don't make the fee too little. I mean, I think if you charge a $25 or $50 fee, that's too little. That almost feels like a penalty. But I'm sure that HAR has had some amazing workshops on charging fees and how to structure those and how to price all that. Um, so as I said, all this time you're demonstrating expertise, and don't be afraid to mention things like, if you're a part of a host agency that is, has certain accolades, or part of a consortia, or just other things that demonstrate your connections in this industry. And the other thing I would encourage you to think about when you're demonstrating your expertise is to think about yourself the same way an accountant or an attorney or some other service professional um, thinks of themselves. They charge fees. And that's another thing about fees that amazes me, when people say, well, I booked them last year and they paid my fee and now they're going to book again. Should I charge them a fee again? Well, doesn't your accountant charge you to do your taxes every year? This is a whole new job. This is a whole new vacation that you're having to put together. So definitely take advantage of getting that fee to help with your cash flow. So all this time you've been demonstrating your expertise, you've been learning about the client, and now it's time to ask for the sale. And asking for the sale the first time is really about getting them to pay your fee and getting them to agree to work with you. And the advantage of having them pay a professional fee and agree to work with you is they're not as likely to go out and shop multiple people for the same trip. And they are not as likely to go out to the internet and shop every little piece and say, well, it was $12 cheaper over here. If they've paid the fee and they've agreed to work with you, then they will have a better um, feeling about what's coming and what you're going to do next. And so at this point, they've said, yep, okay, send that to me. and I'll send it to you as soon as I get off the call. I'll pay your fee. I'll fill out the forms, and then you start working on it. And let's talk next Tuesday because I'm out of town on Friday, and we'll go over the option. So that is asking for the sale truly. And once you have presented the presentation to them, you've done a presentation to them of what you want, you're continuing to build that relationship. And it doesn't stop when it's when you've traveled, when they've booked, and at no point does relationship with this client stop if you want to have a long-term client. And it's so much less expensive and so much less work to get a repeat client than it is to try to keep going out and finding new clients all the time. Plus, repeat clients are where your referrals come from. And so that's really another benefit to having that relationship building. So one of the best ways that you can build the relationship with the client is when you have that presentation and you're ready to talk to them about it, is to set up a Zoom session again and go over the proposal with them. Okay, this is all the things that we talked about for St. Lucia. I heard you say these are the things that are important. Let me show you what I've put together. And you get on Zoom and you go through whether you're using Travify or Access or Turn or UMAP or whatever you're using to put your presentation together. Please don't just show them a quote from the vendor. Remember, you are the product. They're paying for you, the product. So everything should have your branding, your logo, your information, and you are working with them as you and them together. These other people just come in as service providers, really. So you're building a relationship by showing them, look, I heard you. This is what you said you wanted. And so now I'm going to go over the presentation. If for some reason I know a lot of people are really uncomfortable with the idea of having these multiple conversations on Zoom with people. What you could do is use something like Loom or some other video platform and record yourself going through the presentation and having that same conversation and saying, I heard what you said was important. Here's what I've put together. Let me go through it with you. If you just send them an email that says, here's what I've put together for you, and they have to open a PDF and read it, it just falls flat. And it doesn't speak to the service delivery aspect of really what you want when you're talking to a client. So if you really want to build a business based on service, you have to think about the service opportunities at every instance and every one of those opportunities to touch the client, to share information with them, which is why the relationship building doesn't stop when the trip is booked. So you are going to want to send them information, occasional touch bases. If we're talking today and I'm traveling in April or May, there needs to be some touch bases between now and then, whether it's about double check your passport. Well, you've already checked their passport to make sure that the expirations are good. But here are some books that you might want to read that are set in St. Lucia, or here are some. Here's a great video I found about St. Lucia. I think you might enjoy. There's lots of little things like that that you can do, and in a lot of systems, you can set a lot of this up automatically, so you're not having to do this for every single client. And then once the trip travels, you are still going to continue to reach out to them. I think the number one missed opportunity is when the client comes back from their trip. You need to pick up the phone and call them. Even if you don't get them on the phone, call them and leave a message to say, I cannot wait to hear about St. Lucia. Give me a call back or send me an email. And I would also send them an email to this effect if you don't get them on the phone. Let's set up a time to chat, or would just love to hear your thoughts and how it went. And because you also are going to want to talk about what they want to do next, because this is the time that they're most excited about travel. when they've just come back. And even though they're busy and they've been out and their inbox is overwhelming them, they still probably want to talk about what's next. And if they went somewhere, whether it was an all inclusive or on a cruise, where they might have booked another trip, you need to know that. And it's fine to ask them and to say, um, I think, I'm so glad you had a good time. Did you have an opportunity, especially if it's a cruise, did you have an opportunity to rebook while you were on board? And I would encourage you to encourage clients to do that if it's a cruise partner that immediately transfers that booking back to you and you can serve it for them. So give them the information about that. So these kinds of things are really important to do when you are working with clients. There's so many little touch points, and this is what makes the difference between being a travel advisor and a service professional and just being a travel agent, where you're just giving out quotes, giving out prices, getting things booked. People really don't need that anymore. It used to be we needed somebody to actually do the booking, but that's not the case anymore. So you want to make sure that you are sending this information out. And I really like the idea, and at Gifted Travel Network, we really encourage everybody to do this, to send out a weekly email newsletter. It's not salesy, it's informational. And it doesn't have to be long, but email is still the number one way, according to all research, that clients want to communicate with people they do business with. So sending out a short email newsletter needs to be pretty. So you're going to need something like Constant Contact or MailChimp, and don't do the free version because you're sending information about travel. If you use the free version, your email might inadvertently have ads for travel tacked onto it, and you end up losing your customers. So send them an email every week, all of your clients an information email every week. It could be about different things. Like one week it could be about, hey, have you ever thought about taking a culinary tour, and you just talk about that. And the next week it might be about 10 packing tips that you may not have thought of. So it's not salesy, it's not deals from partners. It is just informational, focused on traveling. So those are that is really the process that we see and that I've personally seen that really results in closing the sale, because the person wants to work with you. They understand that you know where it is they're interested in traveling. It doesn't matter if you haven't been there. You don't have to tell them that. If you've been there, say that. Oh, I went to St. Lucia. It was gorgeous. We did this, this, and this. But if you haven't, you don't have to say that. And you can certainly um, just gloss over that point completely. If they ask you, have you been here? Don't lie, but just you don't have to say, I haven't been there. But building that connection with them by talking about what they're interested in, getting to know them, and then once you've really put together something that they look at and go, wow, she really gets us. She really knows what we're interested in, and this looks like an amazing trip. That's when you've really built a relationship with people, and that's when you're really going to close the sale and you're going to get more clients to book with you. So you have to focus on you, what you can offer them, and what you can learn from them. Build that rapport so that you can better serve them and so that they get excited about working with you. And remember that more and more people out there are being exposed to lots of consumer media that talks about why you need to be working with a travel advisor. So this is not a new concept to most people. It will be to some, but it won't be to all. So hopefully those tips will help you. And then the other thing I wanted to offer is when you're starting to do all of this and you're focusing on service, one of the reasons that you do that is so that you can be more profitable. Obviously, spending time with clients like this takes more time, and so scaling your business is a completely different uh, item than just booking more trips, because there's only so many hours in a day and none of us want to be working 18-hour days and making no money. So we have a free scaling and profitability guide that you can use that QR code and download, and we'll be happy to send it to you. And I think you'll find that it has lots of information in there that'll help you make more money as a travel advisor. And it's a supplement to all the amazing content that Host Agency Reviews puts out there and shares with you. So I know I talked a lot, and I'm going to stop talking now, Steph. And so, what questions does anybody have? I'm happy to answer questions about anything that I might could possibly answer questions about.
Well, Sandy, before we get into the questions, I have to say there are a lot of Sandy fans, including myself, in the comments about how great the information has been and how it's really speaking to them and the challenges that they're having. So thanks for putting this on.
It's my pleasure.
All right, let's start with Hamanji asks, do you ask clients to take photos and give feedback about the trip when you're doing that follow-up call or
You absolutely can. You certainly can do that. You can tell them, and we have some advisors who use a product called Photo Circle, and they have a paid Photo Circle account, and they can create a Photo Circle that says, um, like if I was doing this for Steph, it would say the Steph Lee trip to St. Lucia, and you would send it to them. They could dump all their photos in there. You could ask them if you could use one or two of their photos, and especially you wouldn't want to use photos with their children in it, but you could certainly use photos and in your marketing or to share with other people. You just want to get their permission first. And it's
Mhm,
certainly a great idea to do that. I think the other thing that you can do, a lot of our advisors do these just booked posts from social media. So it'll maybe just say just booked for the Smith family or just booked for a family from Charlotte, this fabulous trip to St. Lucia, and you show a picture of where they're going just to show the depth and breadth of what you can do as a travel advisor.
and that social proof really helps for adding validity to, as well as encouraging FOMO. So,
Exactly. And there is nothing that encourages FOMO like pictures of travel, because that's the bad thing you'll find out about getting into this industry is every presentation you go to, you feel like, oh, I want to go there. Your bucket list was this long and now it's like this long. Mine is.
yeah, it's the bad part about being in the travel industry.
Yes, it is. It is.
Um, and I just want to say that when you were talking about the following up with the client, that the relationship doesn't end after they take the trip, that
Hmm.
that follow-up call is not only important for the relationship but also for you to grow as an advisor, to be able to hear from your client's perspective
Absolutely.
what they loved. So it's a great way for you with continuing education. Maybe they found a restaurant that you hadn't heard of that they just loved. So lots of it's you may think, oh, I don't want to bother them or it's not worth my time, but there's a lot of value in it for you too, beyond just that relationship building.
That's an excellent point. And, I think the other thing too is travel advisors tend to have this, I don't want to bother my clients perspective, but think about it from the client standpoint. We just spent all this time putting together this amazing trip. I just took this amazing trip and I never hear from you as my travel advisor. What that says to me as the consumer is you don't really care. You don't
Hmm.
really care whether or not I had a good time or not. So it becomes more transactional for you. So even if you don't actually connect with them, listen, we've all played phone tag and we've sent emails that didn't get responded to. At least you reached out, you connected with them. But you're absolutely right. If you can talk to them and find out the things, what's going to be what they did that they loved, it's
Hmm.
fantastic.
Yeah, it's fantastic, fantastic stuff. So we have another question from Gloria, and she is asking, I'm a part of a Facebook group of travel agents and travelers. People are always advertising that they don't have fees. Does this mean I shouldn't be looking for clients on sites like these or forums like these?
So I think, Gloria, there's a lot of those Facebook groups out there that are just inundated with people who really aren't serious professional travel advisors, and they just sort of muddy the water when it comes to being seen. I think a better strategy, if you have an area of focus that would work for this, is to create your own Facebook group. And that works particularly well if if you are focused on a destination or a type of travel. So like we have an advisor who has an amazing Facebook group that's just focused on adventure travel. And she's not in there selling people. She's in there delivering value and sharing information. But if somebody wants to book a trip, they know that they're going to go to her because she is the expert on this particular type of adventure travel. So you probably are going to end up finding better ways to spend your time than trying to convert somebody who's already inundated with people of, I'll book it for free, I'll book it for free, I'll book it for free.
Hmm. And there, just so people know, like the percentage of travel advisors that are charging some sort of fee, it varies based on what segment you're looking at.
Hmm.
But for hosted advisors, it's like 49%. So it's half of advisors are charging fees. And you take into account that there's a lot of new advisors there who oftentimes don't feel as comfortable charging fees. So it's not as if you're outside the norm when you're charging fees. It's a very common thing nowadays.
It is, and I'll be very happy personally when it becomes much closer to 100% because travel advisors provide so much value. They have so many connections. They have so much knowledge. They provide so much service. They should be paid
Hmm.
for their time, and the commission really should be a thank you from the partner that you worked with, not the bulk of your income in Sandy's humble opinion.
Well, I love your opinion, Sandy, so keep them coming.
Yeah.
Uh, we got another question on what's a good format for a client intake form, and then where should I make this form?
So there's lots of different options for this, and so this kind of goes back to the whole tech stack conversation, which is a conversation that I've had quite a lot because I'm very much a tech geek. But you need, when you're getting started, you need this, and if you didn't get it started this way, you need to do this. But you need some sort of a CRM, a client relationship management system that has a form capabilities built into it. And there's lots of companies out there that do this. There's travel specific companies like Turn and Travify and Travel Joy that can do this. And you want to be able to, I would encourage you to do your research and figure out what you like best. Some of it is honestly Apple versus Android sort of way of looking at things. Some people are just Apple people, some people are just Android people. And if you love this one and somebody else loves that one, use the one that you love. But you need some way to securely collect data from clients that's going to feed into one system that you're going to be able to access it from moving forward. And usually that same system is where people process their credit cards for their professional fees.
Hmm. So, what kind of questions, because you had mentioned earlier that you're a big fan of those shorter intake forms,
Hmm.
what kind of fields or questions do you think are the must-haves that people should be asking?
So I would want to get anything that I would need to know to hold a booking if I'm quoting somebody. You don't always have to do that, but if you, for cruises, for instance, if you're looking at a cruise and a client really wants this particular kind of balcony cabin that has whatever, and there's only one left, well, you want to be able to get it, and to get it and hold it, you've got to have their information. So at a minimum, I would ask for the legal names as they appear on the passports for each person who's traveling, their dates of birth. I would get an email address for the person you're going to be working with, phone number for the person that you're going to be working with, and then you can ask some other questions of if they have particular preferences about airlines, cruise lines, tour companies, that sort of thing. But at a minimum, I would get that information. And it has another benefit as well, because you never want to have the client say to you, oh, well, let me give you our names and dates of birth, and they read them to you and you write them down. Because when there's a mistake, later on, then it's because you wrote it down wrong, or if you're like me, you can't even read your own handwriting and you put the wrong thing in, and that happens more than you would think. You would also be amazed at how many people don't even know what their legal name is. And they'll tell you one thing, and then they get the passport out the week before travel and go, I forgot that my legal first name is George. I go by my middle name. And then, does that really matter? Yeah, a little bit. So when you get to the airport, that's just not going to be okay.
I just love that. Oh, to be so like naive going through life. Oh, that's why you put the word legal in front of there.
Exactly, exactly. I always ask people for copies of their passports too, because I want to make sure that I can see it and I have it. You also want to find out when those passports expire, because many people don't realize. They think, okay, I'm coming back on January 1st. I'm fine. My passport expires January 5th. And that is not the case. So they need
Mhm.
at least 6 months beyond that.
Yep. Question from the traveler style. When you share destination info with your email list, do you ever worry that potential clients might use that information to book the trip themselves rather than reaching out to you or another travel advisor?
So you're not really sharing anything that would be immediately bookable. And I just don't really like to go through life worrying about that kind of thing. I feel like if they are the kind of person that's going to be on my email list and they're going to take that information and go spend 85 hours researching and booking it on their own, they wouldn't book with me anyway or any other travel advisor. So I've done something good for that destination by sending them a client, and that's okay too. And so I wouldn't worry about that. But likewise, that's why I also wouldn't go out and prepare a huge proposal for somebody and just send it to them without charging them a professional fee. And that
Mhm.
professional fee, by the way, is your fee. None of it goes towards the trip. That fee goes in your pocket. So if they look at it and they say, "Oh, well, now we can't afford to go," or something's changed, you've already got your money, and you've been paid at least something for your time.
Mhm. Question from Hamanji. So I have a question about networking to reach out to more clients and suppliers. I'm not sure if there are specific travel related events that I should attend. What do you recommend, Sandy?
So I think I'm a big fan of getting really clear on the supplier side about what it is that you want to sell, who you want to sell, and really having maybe your top 5 partners that you work with all the time, because by spreading out too much and diluting your focus too much, you can't develop relationships with partners that way. So you are
Mhm.
going to want to focus on some sort of an event that's going to give you an opportunity to connect with those people. That could be through something that your host agency does. It could be something that a consortia does. It could be something that's open to the whole industry, like Cruise World, or Clea's cruise event, or some other travel industry event, to give you an opportunity to connect with those partners. As far as connecting with clients, the very best way to connect with clients is to get super clear on who it is that you want to work with, what your ideal client looks like, and then put yourself in a place where you can be surrounded by them. That does not mean putting yourself in a place that you're surrounded by them to sell to them immediately, but just to get to know them, to expand your network. It may be advertising in a publication that they read every month, or maybe you're going to do online ads that target those people. But if you're not clear about who your ideal client is, then you're just doing a shotgun approach, and you're going to end up spending a lot of time and a lot of money and not reaching the right person.
Mhm. So Sue asked a really great question. So how do you determine what a reasonable fee would be? What are the gifted travel network advisors fee range look like?
Yeah, so we just recently asked this question of a group of advisors that we had together, just for frame of reference. But the it can be a little bit difficult. I think some of it you have to keep in mind what you're booking. If you are primarily booking people whose average vacation spend is, you know, $1,000 for a week, um, then you're not going to be able to charge as high a fee as somebody who's going to spend $10,000 for a
Mm.
week. So that plays into it. I talk to your colleagues in your within your host agency and see what they're charging. But I would say generally most of the people that I talk to have a fee for, and this is for the trip, not per person or um, I wouldn't get too complicated with it, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 250 to say $600 per trip is generally kind of the fee with range that I see most often, not just with Gifted Travel Network advisors, but across the industry as well. And some people charge a lesser fee, but and I would also caution you not to make it too little. As I said before, it can come across as sort of a penalty. It's like when you buy a car and they charge you a paperwork fee. Okay, well, get out of the way. I'll do the paperwork myself, and then I'm not going to pay you a fee. How about that? Um, but you don't want it to feel like a penalty, but then you also want it to be somewhat reasonable. And it does vary a little bit by location. So if you're in New York City, the fees are probably higher than they are if you're somewhere in a more rural area in the Midwest.
Hmm.
And I would also
Exactly.
say one last thing about fees. Please don't say, I'm new, so I don't charge fees. If you are getting into this profession and you've done a lot of work getting into it and you've learned a lot, you've invested in training and being with a host agency and all the things, charge a fee. Maybe you start out at $150 and then you increase it as you grow, but just make sure that you start with something.
Hmm. And for our survey reports that just came out, so to give people an idea, most people charge a flat fee for their consultation fee, and $100 is the median flat fee, but the IQ range, which means like between the 25th and the 75th percentile, is like 50 to $250. And
Okay.
keep in mind, GTN too is a luxury agency, and their advisors are focused on higher end travel.
Yeah.
All right, let me see if we can squeeze in two more questions because there's
Okay.
good questions. How do I start a conversation with complete strangers about my service? Are there any marketing strategies? I'm not very good at it.
Hmm. It can be hard. I totally 100% relate to that. And the other thing I would say is um, maybe you don't need to. I mean, one of the questions I was just on a call yesterday and somebody was talking about, um, well, let's get away from the what do you do for a living kind of question and ask different questions of one another when we meet new people, is to say, where was your last vacation?
Hmm.
And so if you're having conversations with people and you talk about that, then at some point it will come out that you work in the travel industry. And and you should have a good elevator speech. So you should be able to say, I help people put together trips that for their families or whatever that will um, bring them lifelong memories that they will cherish for a lifetime or something like that. Um, so you may not necessarily need to. I definitely would not feel like you need to go to a networking event and focus on how many people can I tell I'm a travel agent and how many people can I get signed up for my newsletter. It really, the long-term success comes from relationships and connecting with people and having those relationships with others so that you are seen as a trusted source and a guide, not a pushy salesperson. So I would say that take the pressure off yourself to and just connect with people. Just
Hmm.
be curious about people, get to know them, and that's the very best thing you can do.
That's a perfect piece of advice to end on is to be curious about people, and
Mm,
because that's how you really build relationships.
mm-hmm.
So thank you. Thank you, Sandy. That is all we've got for today. Thank you for all of the wonderful questions and all of the love for Sandy and her fabulous advice in the comments. If you're catching the tail end of it, we will have the recording. It will be living on our YouTube channel that you can access at any time. But Sandy's tips are par for the course on what you should be doing as an advisor if you're having trouble closing those sales. So thank you for sharing that with us, Sandy.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Steph.
Yes, and everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We will send a link to the recording afterwards. Sandy, would you be okay if we shared the slides as well
Yeah,
with
of
okay,
course.
perfect.
Absolutely.
We'll grab the slides from Sandy, and then we'll send those out with the email to those of you that registered. So thank you, everyone, and thank you again, Sandy.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.